In a minute, I'm going to introduce the candidates that are present. As some of you know, and it's obvious, because there are 14 people, 15 people, who will be running for in our civic election, and some of them are not here. Their absence, I want you to know, is simply short notice about this particular gathering and other commitments that they have at this time. It's Thanksgiving, and people have other things that they're committed to be doing today. We want you to understand that their absence is nothing more than other commitments, and that their absence is not to be determined as a lack of interest or concern. I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge the caretakers of this land that we are gathered on, those who have walked here for generations before us, the Sinaks, the Silk, and the Tunahal. The format for this evening will be each of our candidates will give you a 2-minute introduction of themselves and tell us why they're running for mayor, re-election as a councillor or as a councillor. Following that, we will ask that we've divided the candidates into 2 groups for a question period. We have received questions that will be asked. We will not be having questions from the floor this evening. And I also would just like to ask us all to really take the time to listen, because that's what we're here to do tonight, listen to each other. So Deb McIntosh here on the end is running for mayor. Florio Vasilakis. How was that? I have to get him to write it down in phonetics for me in order to even vaguely get it right. Tan Rai, Bergen Price, oh dear, Sue, Heaton, Davidoff, Janice Sylvestre, Nicole Hergert, Maria McFadden, and Tyler Maddox. And now they are going to talk to us, and we're going to hear first from Florian.
Hello. For those of you that don't know me, I came to Castlegar from Penticton after graduating from UBC Vancouver in 2002. I came here to invest and expand our family business because we saw what you all see, a beautiful city with huge opportunity and potential. I continue to be confident in the future of Castlegar and the progress we can make together. When first elected in 2013, I promised to bring new energy and a different perspective to the table. As a business and commercial and residential property owner, I have insight into the issues that matter most to business. Over the last 5 years, we have made significant...
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen and fellow candidates. Why do I want to be your mayor? Well, I guess the answer is I've been working up to this for the last 16 years. I've been involved in the community, and I've represented each and every one of you to my very best ability. I think being mayor is more than just chairing at the table. I think it's being involved from the street level right on up to business. I think it's being able to engage with all sectors of society and being able to be a face that's approachable and willing to come out and talk to people. I've been able to do that through my 16 years. I've taken on the hard questions at council. I've stood up where a leader should stand up, and I've taken the hits. I believe that communication is key, and I think that the mayor has to be able to communicate with its council in order to communicate with its community, and I can do that. I have a passion for Castlegar, as does everyone sitting at the table, and I think with my abilities, the 16 years experience, and my vitality and energy, I could be the mayor that Castlegar needs, and the mayor that Castlegar deserves. I am that person. I can do the job. I have the experience. And October 20th, I ask you to vote Deb McIntosh for mayor of the city of Castlegar. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is...
Thanks, Elizabeth. I want to start out by saying thank you so much to the organizers once again for pulling this together. Things like this are really important. It's really the heart of democracy. And thank you to all of you who are here, and for the candidates who are here, who are running, those who are here and those who are not. Thank you to everyone for making our democracy stronger. My name is Heuther, and I hope to earn your vote on October 20th. Castlegar has been the home of my family for the last 4 years. I knew from the moment I set foot on Zuckerberg Island and saw the confluence of the Kootenay and Columbia River, this would be home. Right away, I started getting involved in the community, and I've worked with the community, in the community, organizing and participating since then. Those that know me best know the work I've done with the community garden to create a place of beauty, learning, and connection for the very young and the very, or not so, very old. Inspired by this and other work, I'm running for council. I see a Castlegar with great potential, a city waiting to make a commitment to sustainability, a city that cares about its members. I'm running for council because I have something to offer this great city. Great cities are democratic. Great cities represent their citizens. Great cities deliberate before making decisions. Castlegar can do this. Castlegar can listen to its citizens, hear their voices, and make bold and brave decisions. I can be part of the team to lead this process. Great cities make bold and brave decisions. Our city is already making bold decisions. We can continue to do this. We can have safe and functioning roads. We can update water and sewer systems. We can also protect our natural environments. We can increase infrastructure for active transportation, thereby reducing the number of one-finger waves.
Thank you. We're very lucky that we have these people willing to serve us. Thank you all. And now we move to question time. What are your thoughts on our existing healthcare system in Castlegar? What efforts should be made to get 24/7 service at our urgent care center? And how can the community help council in this regard? Deb is first.
Well, that question is never ending. So really, we sit on the West Kootenay Regional Health Hospital Board, and we have lobbied for 24/7. We've lobbied for better services. We've lobbied for more services. The fact of the matter is that IHA is not granting them. So we can continue to lobby. There's been no shortage of lobbying. It's a provincial issue. It is something that we have to work with our doctors with, and it's a community issue. We have tried everything to get 24/7, to get increased services, and I'm sorry, I have no answer for you in that we have done everything we can, and it's now lobbying the provincial government to recognize that we are hurting here and that we need better services. I wish I could tell you something that was more fulfilling, but that's the honest truth. We've been fighting for years to get it, and we just are not getting the support at the table.
Well, as a sitting city councilor, I would echo everything that Councillor McIntosh or Deb McIntosh just said. I would recommend that that all of you contact the MLA that we have here, Katrine Conroy's office. She is now a minister in the sitting government of the province of British Columbia, and we have finally a voice at the table at the provincial level. If you go back in time, of course, with the Liberal government and having a MLA that was on the opposing.
It sounds like they've been working really hard with our best interests at heart. As someone coming onto council with a new perspective and a new way of doing things, understanding the shift in how primary care is provided, I wonder if it is time to shift also our focus and start looking at primary care networks and how things are working to support not only doctors but nurse practitioners and other primary care workers in our area to make sure that they have what they need, that they can be providing the services before people go to hospital.
Anyone else? All right. Our next question is addressed to Group B. Selkirk College is bringing hundreds of students to our communities each year. These students often navigate our bus system, look for affordable housing, try to find employment, and sometimes face language and cultural barriers. With Selkirk not centrally located, how can we make Castlegar a more welcoming place for students? Sue first, please.
Wow, that's a loaded question.
In that question, what I'm actually hearing is a question about hospitality. How are we extending hospitality to new people in our city, whether they are international students or from away? The hospitality that we extend looks different. What can the city do? The city council is really the voice of our city, and so we can extend hospitality as much as we can, but it's the people on the ground that really have to honor that. In terms of looking at city council, I really like what Janice said about co-op programs. Those are critical to get people engaged and part of our community. Promoting active transportation. So ways for people to get from point A to point B without driving a car when you don't have access to one, really important, especially over to the college. Affordable housing. The city made great strides in changing the bylaws, so we have a new fire truck, and we can build higher, so we can build slightly higher density per city. Those are all really important. And the last thing I think that I would like to see if I'm on city council is partnerships between the city, whether it be the city council and those organizations that are already working on these things in our city. There are lots of places that do their very best to extend that hospitality. How can we support them? And how can we make sure that the people who come are connected to those?
Maria.
Yeah, I think it's two parts. I think one is training. We have many friends that work at the college. We have many teenagers that grow up and go to the college, and we have many international students that come around our home. Many have sat around our dinner table, and we've asked them this exact same thing. They're often lonely. They're often feeling like they're totally out of their depth and have no idea about our culture. And I would like to see a training process. So when they come here, that we give them the basics beyond school. We're teaching them about how do they get around our community? What access do they have for places where they can connect with other people their age? What access do they have to some of the resources we have in town? Places that they can meet other people. Thursday nights we put on a dinner for anyone and everyone who needs to at the church. And a lot of those college students have come and met a totally different demographic of our community, but get to sit and just have dinner together. But those kind of places are needed, and some of that training is needed for them. The second piece is organic. It has to do with what kind of culture do we want to have in Castlegar. I love what Nicole had to say about hospitality. Do we want to have a culture that says, we want you around? And that means that we're going to invite you over for dinner, and we're going to help you understand what it's like to be here. We're going to help you with rides when you need a ride. We're going to give you a family that you may not have here. And a lot of them, that is the biggest thing they don't have, is they don't have a network around them that cares. And they feel very lost. And that goes with, if you talk to anyone who works at the college, the depression rates, the anxiety rates in this group of people that are coming into our culture, into our city, is skyrocketing. And a lot of it is because they just don't have a network. And we can be that network, but that is, as a city council, how do we create events that maybe get them connected with the community? And then as a community, you need to embrace them. You need to say that these are valuable people that just want someone to see them and to want them to be around. So I encourage you and City Council both to partner and figure out what we can do for that.
Tyler.
So as a formal student at Castlegar's
Site of antiquity and interest to Indigenous people. Would you be willing to invite Indigenous groups to participate in the process of planning and developing city lands? Do cities have a responsibility to uphold our Constitution's duty to consult? Starting with Florio, please.
Absolutely, we do have a responsibility to communicate and engage with the First Nations and the Indigenous people from this area. More recently, the City Council has preserved some Camas land near downtown in the area of Millennium Park. We've also made sure that the proper process was undertaken when we purchased a piece of land for the SPCA and then donated it to the SPCA, that it went through the proper process and went to consultation with the First Nations that were interested in doing so. And we've also purchased, or we have brought in recently an area of the weigh scales and the rock pits from the Ministry of Highways into the city limits. And that, if it ever comes within the city's land inventory, will also be responsible for engagement with First Nations. So I think it absolutely is, and we are doing so. The First Nations don't have as much presence out here. From my hometown in Penticton, the Penticton Indian Band, there's lots of engagement, lots of relationship building, and I think that I'd be willing to sit down with any people that would like to come and engage with the city, build that relationship, see how we can work together moving forward, and make sure that everybody feels welcome. If it's First Nations that want to do a project, that we would be willing to do so.
More than that, we should be recognizing and honoring their traditional territory at meetings and other events that we host. It's easy to say that we're going to consult with them. It's another thing to act on it. We have our provincial obligations to consult with them. We're not going to consult with them on Lot B on Columbia Avenue. We don't do that. We do it more in a provincial way. Now, having said that, we have preserved some land at Millennium for Camas, and we were honored to have Shelley Boyds show up at one of our meetings to talk to us about the importance of respecting and honoring their culture and working with us. So I think that is one step that has happened that will garner a better friendship and a better partnership, bringing them in to work with us, and having us all learn together, the community, council, whoever's at the table, why it's important to honor and respect, why it's important to look at the past in order for us to move forward. It's a wonderful thing, and I think we could do a better job in representing our Indigenous people at the council table as well as in the community. I think we've not done that really well.
Thank you. Jana.
There's three good reasons that I can think of for answering that question in the positive. One is the legal reason. The city has an obligation to acknowledge Gitsin-Wet'suwet'en and obligations in all aspects of resource exploitation and culture. But the other one is about hospitality and building community. Castlegar College has looked to the future with a model called the indigenization of Castlegar College. And the point of that is because we're a rural community, and First Nation communities are rural populations that are growing. And putting forward a policy that looks towards reconciliation is good for our administration And the third point is economic development. Differentiation based on our natural resources is how we're going to build economic development.
Thank you. Any other comment from UP members? There being none, on to question 4. Currently, there are 2 80-acre parcels of land that include Kennard Trails, the Waterline Trails, the Gas Line Trail, the Cobra Climb, top-notch climbing, and a wetland stream area that are on the market for private sale. Do you support the protection of public access to these amenities? And if so, what possibilities would you consider to achieve that goal? Starting with Jan.
I support the city building our future on the protection of natural habitat. In habitat for animals and habitat for people, to create green space that is natural in its preservation, and to also look at our forest and water resource management.
Protecting those lands is very important. Access to the outdoor natural environment is why many people move here. It's important for those of us who live here now and those of us who will live here in the future, including our children. I believe that the city has several tools that it can use to preserve those lands, including exploring partnerships, protecting sensitive land that's on public or private property, just to name a few. And I hope that this council moving forward will explore those and look at ways to preserve these recreation opportunities that people are already using and would be very sad to have lost.
We currently use those. I live right by there. My husband and I have rock climbed up there. We hike those trails all the time. So I personally would be extremely sad if they weren't access to us. But I do understand it's a very complicated question. Why? Because it's privately owned land. And as soon as we get into people's rights and what they own, it becomes a muddled bowl, right? Of all of these different avenues.
I don't think anyone's against saving green space. Once it's gone, and that's the reality of it. What we can't do is agree to spend $380,000, I think it was, in taxpayers' funds without some discussion. Is it lovely up there? Absolutely. Would I love to say that? Yes, I would. And I agreed with them when they came to council. But as Councillor Sue Heaton said, there's more to it than just purchasing and saving it. There's ongoing maintenance. So the conversation needs to happen at the community as where we go with green space, and do we have to start a land bank? Do we have to start pre-planning it in order to be ahead of the curve on this stuff? Because once it's gone, and I wholeheartedly support the green space that we have now.
Anyone else? On we go. 30 minutes. Oh, 30 minutes left. Thank you. Castlegar has a vibrant visual arts community and supports cinema, indoor and outdoor sports, and other recreational activities. Would you support the development of a theater for plays, dance performances, and concerts? And
Yes, I would certainly support such a venue. I mean, this is a beautiful facility we're in right now, and I mean, it's great. But to have a bigger one, and I know a number of years ago there was a private entrepreneur that was trying to build a venue like that. It didn't come to fruition. We have lots of land around. There's land out by Selkirk College, possibly somebody could do something with. I'm a huge supporter of the culture and everything. I mentioned it in my speech earlier. I think we need to find somebody out there that wants to do it, even if it's like an amphitheater type idea, outdoor theater that we could do maybe down in Millennium Park. I know there's been talk about doing one up in Kinsman Park and even Canary Park.
Well, of course I would support it, but is it something that the city should be doing? Is it something that we should be investing in, or is it an outside group asking for our support? I think, again, if we build it, then we maintain it and we staff it. So you guys, the citizens, need to determine whether we get into the theater business or not. All of these things are wonderful, and wouldn't it be great if we had them all? We would be the best place on earth. The fact of the matter is there's a cost associated with everything, but we can always look at it, and like Bergen said, you have to do your homework, you have to have facts and figures, and you have to have buy-in from the community. So always a good conversation to have. Terry Moon tried it years ago. It was a very big plan, and it would have been lovely if it had come to fruition. Unfortunately, the city of Castlegar itself is not in the business of building those. So conversations to be had at a later date for sure. And yeah, I would support it, but I wouldn't support it at this time with taxpayers' dollars.
I would agree with all the previous answers. One of the ways that City Council kind of defines what they're going to be doing is by having a strategic meeting and setting priorities for the term of council. And where these projects and these ideas fit into a long-term vision of the community, and as far as funding, the ability to fund it. Recently there was a study done that showed that the most vibrant and healthy
of a route parallel to Columbia to permit movement between North Castlegar and South Castlegar in emergency situations like fires and medical emergencies in the event of Columbia being blocked. Group B. Starting with you, Nicole. Yes.
Excellent, thank you. You notice Group B has almost entirely new, and we have the hardest question. So this is a real test for us, which is good. Do I support the development of an alternative route that follows the same as north-south, so there's not so much traffic on Columbia? Sorry?
If you could clarify the question, it includes fire, ambulance.
Fire, ambulance.
Yes, it says, what are your thoughts on the development of a route parallel to Columbia to permit movement between North Castlegar and South Castlegar in emergency situations like fires and
Yeah.
yes, thank you. And medical emergencies in the event of Columbia being blocked.
What are my thoughts? My thoughts are it would be wonderful if we had a second route running through the city. In terms of realistically what we're looking at, we currently have a route on the other side of the river, which I recognize is not the most convenient. I am not currently on council. I cannot speak to the intricacies of developing such a route. Do I think it's a great idea? Yes. Is it something that I can support? Not without a lot more information, and not without taking a closer look at the budget and what the city's priorities are already.
I feel like this is a very hot topic right now with Columbia being in the state that it is in. Do I support it? Again, we're talking about a fiscally responsible question, right? Like, can we afford to do it right now with our current tax bracket, with the tax money that they have coming in? I don't think any of us who are new can really give an accurate understanding of that question. Why? Because we aren't sitting behind closed doors. We haven't been in those conversations yet. Do I think it's something that probably should be in the forefront of our mind looking forward? Absolutely. Will we need it one day? Absolutely. But what that looks
Bergen, I believe we start with you. What do you think of the city of Castlegar's plan to build a waterfront trail from north of Millennium Park to Blueberry Creek?
So, like any business decision, like I talked about in my opening speech, it would have to create the most value for Castlegar. It would have to fit into our long-term plan, and it would have to be financially feasible. So, it looks like there is, the more homework I've done on this topic, there's strong voice against it. And for me, I would have to take an analytical approach, same way I do at my current job. I would have to weigh out the options and see how much this is going to cost us. Can we afford it? Is it going to be fair for the taxpayers? Is it going to have value for Castlegar? Right now, I'm seeing there's a lot of environmental impact with that, more studies that are going to have to be done, a lot more homework is going to have to be done before we can just say, yeah, let's build this thing. We have to come out with a clear message. We can't just say we want to just have this giant trail and pave it and have all this cement poured in and just go at it. We have to do our homework first. And like my experience with the complex expansion is, we see a project like that divided a community, and then you see a project like this, and you want to take a community and fracture it even more. For me, I just don't see the current benefit of this. But like anything, my stance right now is, from the information I've been given, I just don't think it's right for Castlegar at this point. But if I get other information that contradicts that and is fact and true, I'll change my position. But right now, from a business standpoint, it just doesn't seem like it creates value for Castlegar from what I've heard so far, and what I've read and what I've looked into. So from my standpoint, that's my stance until proven otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb?
I knew this would come up. The problem with the waterfront master plan is that when the consultants rolled it out, it had a red line, which absolutely sent owners into combat mode, and rightly so. So we tried to move it forward a few meetings ago so that we could adopt it and do some work on it. I think that most councillors, I think all councillors sitting at the table right now, at the current council table, do not support the red line. We've heard very loud, very clear messaging from the residents of Castlegar. I do, however, support part of the plan that allows some access in public places to access the river. I think it has some low-hanging fruit, as it's called, and I think it has merit. Does it have merit in the next 5, 10, 15 years? I don't know. But I do know that without moving it forward and working on it and getting more public consultation, it was a lot of wasted money that will go nowhere. And I ask people to, if you take the red line out and just look at it for what its merits are, I think there's some viable things there.
Gloria?
There's no question that we got started off on the wrong foot. The communication sucked right from the get-go, and until that kind of put us off on the wrong foot. So I have to say that I apologize to all the people here, especially along the waterfront owners, who felt like they weren't part of the conversation to begin with. What I do have to say is that there was no ulterior motive for us. We didn't have anything, even though a lot of people think that we had some idea, some preconceived plan in our head of what was going to happen. Yes, there was an idea of starting at one end of town and going to the other. But just as Deb McIntosh said, we have a clear indication, and I mentioned it at a council meeting only a couple months ago, that I would support the plan without the areas that are in front of current property owners.
Without expropriation of people's lands. That was never our intention. So I think when we all saw the final report and the red line from Millennium to Blueberry, we were totally shocked. But I think we have to go back to our citizens and have a really good dialogue. We have a lot of public lands that we own, and as the Deb, Florio, and Dan said, that we can build viewpoints, we can have bathroom facilities, garbage can places. This waterfront trails happen everywhere around the world. We just have to be very creative how we do ours and make sure we're not encroaching on people's property. Thanks.
Thank you. Tyler?
Okay, well, yeah, with not repeating a lot of this other things that people said, I've spoken to a lot of people about this, and definitely no shortage of communication around all this. We've seen petitions going around that had hundreds of signatures, and it's good to see that current council is steering away from the private land issue. I think there's two major things here. I think when it comes to spending money, we don't have a shortage of beautiful walkways along the river. River access.
Agree with using contractors for major improvements to the infrastructure, or do you think the city should hire their own crew? Starts with you, Maria.
Do I think? Again, I think that's a complicated question. I think if you're talking about two proposals that are the exact same amount, they're both saying they're going to charge the same amount, then it's an easy question. Yes, use your locals. If you're talking about a mass discrepancy between what you're going to be paying by using the local crew and what you're going to be paying by bringing someone else in, now it's a different conversation because we have two purposes, right? One is it is to take into account what everyone would like in a perfect world, but the other is to balance budgets, right? It's to make sure that we're being responsible with the finances that you're giving us, your hard-earned money. It's like if you're putting a roof on your house, you are going to go with who's going to be giving you a good quality for the best price you can get. And as a city, we do have to take that into account. But if you're looking at them both offering the same service for relatively the same price, I'm not talking about like 5 or 10% discrepancy, I'm talking about massive discrepancies. But if they're going to do the same, then yes, we should be looking at local. Why? Because it puts more money into our economy, which puts more money being used here, which helps us thrive and grow. But if you are looking at mass discrepancy between those two, then we either have to look at why there's a mass discrepancy and how we can help local businesses stay on par with those that are not local, or we need to be asking the question of what do the taxpayers want us to do? Do they want us to be able to have more to work with, or do they want us to be using local people? And that isn't just our question, that's a question for everyone, I think.
Heuther.
Yeah, I think there's many variables to that question. But I think for the most part, given relatively close financials, I'm always in favor for putting our local workers first. I know there's certainly a few projects that...
Please clarify the question. I think they've missed the point.
Oh, all right. Question was, should we use outside contractors for infrastructure? No. Sorry, someone is, let me just
Do you agree to hire contractors versus or in-house?
City staff
I will
contract out.
again. Pardon me. Do you agree with using contractors for major improvements to the infrastructure, or do you think the city should hire their own crew?
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, Maria just gone, I bet she knows.
You see the difference now? City workers. Yes.
Using city workers versus
City
contractors.
workers.
Yeah, using city workers versus contractors.
Maria, would you like to?
No, I do understand the clarification. You're wondering if the crews that are coming in to work didn't actually do the grunt work on the ground, if we're hiring our local city workers. Is that what I'm guessing that's the clarification that you want. Again, it comes down to numbers. If we can get the same product within a reasonable amount and use our local, then I stand by what I said, absolutely. But if we can't, if there's a mass discrepancy, then we need to either look at why that is and if we can rectify it, or we need to be able to make sure that we're being physically responsible.
Sorry, Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm hoping I'm understanding this right. I feel I was on sort of the right path here when using city workers versus contractors. And again, like I said, there's a lot of variables to that depending on the scope of the project and the people we have currently in place to do something like that. But given the financials, even if there is a slightly higher gap, that it might cost slightly more to have our current workers working, I think 1%, something like that. We really have to look at this more, but yeah, I think putting our current workers in place should always be first and foremost. Yeah, like I said, I think there's a few projects.
Our city workers are the best workers. They go always above and beyond. But when you always add work, infrastructure projects, you always have to do a cost-benefit analysis. Our workers are maxed out. So you have to think, do we have the capacity to perform the job at hand? So that's when we do a cost-benefit analysis. So if they have the time and it's cheaper, we would go with our city workers. If not, you do contractors. So it's never an easy discussion. Every time you add work, you need more workers. Every time we hire a new worker with wages and benefits, it's about $100,000 to your taxation. And I think every $29,000 of new dollars is a 1% increase in taxation. That's what it was for this year. So you do a cost-benefit analysis, and you see what is better for your community. We're not taking work away from our workers. They're already out there doing what they're supposed to do, and they're maxed to the capacity.
Jen?
I support having a city labor force that's dedicated to our asset maintenance. There's value and cost savings to having an institutional knowledge that's contributing to the day-to-day, year-to-year, decade-to-decade maintenance of the city's existing assets. Sue has touched on the other two issues that are about adding new infrastructure and new projects. One is capacity and workforce, and the other one is the labor component. The issue that I would add to that is that I'm not aware of what the city's procurement policy is, but I support a procurement policy that values the economic return of having a fully employed workforce. There's value to an employer to having stable jobs, full-time rather than part-time and rather than short-term. But there is also one other issue to new projects, and that is the capital equipment that's required, and that is definitely a benefit in having private partnerships for infrastructure, because otherwise you're asking the city to own, operate, and maintain capital equipment that it only needs sporadically and only for project specific. And putting that into the private business sector to own that capital equipment is a better overall outcome for the citizens of Castlegar.
Thank you. Nicole? We'll get you sorted.
At the risk of reiterating what's already been said, I think we have here a question that needs to be filtered through two lenses. One is our values. What is important to us as a community? Is it important for us to support our local people? And the second part of that is dollars and cents. Does it make sense financially to hire locally? Does it make sense financially to hire from outside? And then the third piece that Sue and Jana have brought in is, do we have the capacity, do our city workers have the capacity to take on the project?
Florio.
So the capacity of our city employees has been spoken of here. They already do fantastic work. They do small infrastructure jobs like fixing water main breaks, sidewalk repairs, pouring concrete. They do all that stuff. But we don't have the capacity and the experience to run big infrastructure projects like we do in Columbia. And as one mentioned, we don't have the equipment to do so either. One thing, from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, we need to provide the taxpayer with value. And giving them value through supporting local businesses is also a value to the taxpayer, because we have a good tax base in Castlegar, and supporting local business owners by hiring them out to do small projects and to do contract work, I think is very important as well. So it's not just about supporting our own workers, which are fully employed, but also supporting local small business, which helps us with the tax base and jobs as well.
Thank you. Deb, it looks like you want to say something.
There is absolutely room for both. our terrific union staff and to hire contractors. There's work to be done on both parts, and we need to support small business as well as keep a very strong, strident union force as well. So yes, room for both.
Bergen.
So I definitely won't be saying anything different than anybody else has said before, but what I'll say is this, working at Castlegar, this is very similar to what we run into all the time, where it's to contract or not to contract out. So an example I can give you is like Chinook scaffolding. We have our shutdown and we try and use as much of our in-house guys as we can, because I'm a big proponent of using our in-house union workers as much as we can. When they get stretched to the limit, like at shutdown, they can't build as many scaffolds as we need to do our shutdown. So then we need to contract out to Chinook scaffolding. When it's necessary, definitely I think it's the best option is to use in-house. But if your in-house is spread way too thin, then you have to contract out. I'm all for making a business case for hiring more people internally. It's something that's near and dear to me. But if we don't have the resources and we don't want to tax our people too much, then we just can't simply hire these people. So, and I also like the economic spin-off for using local contractors as well. So I think it's definitely a touchy subject, but I think you just have to do what's best for the taxpayer and best for the city.
Thank you very much. We have come to the end of our time. Thank you all